For many years, I've known about the Southern Railway Merchant Navy and West Country/Battle of Britain locomotives, also known collectively as Bullied Pacifics, and I've still got a lot of time for these engines, particularly after seeing a few of them in real life. Since picking up the Bullied Pacifics as train simulator add-ons, modelled by Precision Locomotive Developments, I had intended to review all the Bullieds at some point, but upon learning of the unrebuilt Light Pacifics, aka West Country or Battle of Britain classes, being withdrawn from sale in mid-June 2026, I decided to only cover the Merchant Navy class because both the unrebuilt and rebuilt versions of that class are still available at the time of this video's production. To add, I don't like to review add-ons that are no longer available, and I didn't want to review the rebuilt Light Pacifics without their unrebuilt counterparts as well. For the longest time, we didn't have the Merchant Navy class in TS Classic, and the X-Digital Traction models that were later resold by Just Trains or Steam Sound Supreme only covered the Light Pacifics. In the early 2020s, we finally got the Merchant Navies from PLD, who released the class in two separate packs, with the rebuilt locomotives arriving first in June 2020, followed by the unrebuilt variants in June 2021. As of early July 2026, each pack is still available from PLD's website for £20 at full price, but as for why the class was split into two separate packs in the first place, I'm not sure. As for features on the in-game locomotives, these are generally the same across both the rebuilt and unrebuilt packs. The list includes, but is certainly not limited to, all 30 examples of the class, 2 different reverser types, as is realistic, customizable disc/headlamp arrangements on both the locomotive and tender, high-intensity headlamps for modern-day mainline running, a wide selection of headboards, through which you can cycle forwards with H and cycle backwards with Shift H, realistic physics, realistic regulator and steam chest simulation, a custom auto fireman, vacuum brake ejectors, British Railways ATC simulation for the rebuilt locomotives, and performance mode similar to what you'll find on Caledonia Works locomotives, except in the case of PLD engines, performance mode is enabled with Control-Shift-P. Of course, I didn't miss the random Cornish pasty that's been left above the firebox doors on Clan Line. As an aside, I've only had a Cornish pasty once in my whole life, and that was actually in Cornwall to boot. As for the selection of tenders, the rebuilt pack includes 5 variants, one of which is 35028 Clan Line's tender with air brake equipment, while the unrebuilt pack only includes 3 variants. If I knew how to make headboards or other custom details for locomotives in TS, I'd try to set up 35021 New Zealand line with the flag of my country on one of the lamp irons. Alternatively, and for shits and giggles, I'd put on the headboard I remember seeing on JA1271 when she came to Tauranga in 2011. Incidentally, Oliver Bullied was actually born in New Zealand, more specifically the city of Invercargill, to which I still haven't paid a visit yet. As for the livery selections, the unrebuilt pack features Southern Railway Malachite Green, SR Wartime Black, BR Transitional Malachite Green, which puts me in mind of 34081 92 Squadron, regular BR Lined Brunswick Green, BR Express Blue, and a second variant of Express Blue with red stripes. According to the manual, This variant with red stripes was only worn by 35024 East Asiatic Company. Meanwhile, the rebuilt pack features the BR lined green livery in clean or weathered states, along with a special preservation variant of 35028 Clan Line with all the modern day safety systems as well as air brake equipment in the tender, preservation era BR Blue for 35005 Canadian Pacific Kansas City, and the bizarre 2017 era BR Black Test livery for 35018 British India Line. To add, the rebuilt pack also includes Mercator, the Mark IIA support coach that runs with 35028 Clan Line. This coach looks like an Armstrong Powerhouse model. I was lucky to see two of the preserved Merchant Navy locomotives in real life. There was 35029 Ellerman lines at the National Railway Museum, albeit sectioned on one side, followed by 35005 Canadian Pacific in Steam at the Mid-Hants Railway. Other bullied Pacifics that stick out in my mind for one reason or another include, but are certainly not limited to, 34053 Sir Keith Park, whose namesake has a statue in the New Zealand town of Thames, 34064 Fighter Command, which had a Giesel ejector, and 34072 257 Squadron, the latter being a locomotive that I saw in real life, albeit very briefly as he wasn't in steam, but rather parked in a siding just outside Swanage Station, and my train was actually hauled by a U-Class 260. Thinking back to 35029 Ellerman lines, it's nice to see this locomotive in a complete state with this model in TS, as opposed to the weird sectioned state in which the real thing has been since 1974. This is giving me WW491 flashbacks. It's worth noting that, according to the listing on PLD's website, the in-game merchant navies use audio recorded from the real 35028 Clan Line. For the sake of comparison, let's hear one of these engines in real life, followed by the in-game counterpart. In my opinion, one of the few downsides to PLD's Merchant Navy is the lack of the class leader 21C1 channel packet in her absolute original condition, as depicted in the Hornby model from 2017. The earliest variant of the locomotive included in the TS add-on is this one with little pressed out smoke deflectors, which 21C1, later 35001, didn't have when she was brand new. Both the original and rebuilt packs could be improved with 3D text on their nameplates, the option to adjust the safety valve volume to one's liking, the addition of an absolute original condition variant of channel packet, and perhaps an update to bring them up to the same standard as newer PLD packs, such as the Great Western Railway Hall class. PLD locomotives can come across as very complicated and daunting at first, especially since they don't fully support driving via the F4 heads-up display. But once you've read through the manual and practiced driving enough times, the experience can feel rewarding. In my experience, the main challenge has been remembering the keyboard controls for the firing and injectors, as the standard F4 HUD controls for fire and water don't work. For reference, you need to press F to pay respects and open the firebox doors, press or hold down R to shovel coal, and press Shift F to close the doors. Alternatively, you could hit Ctrl R to enable the auto fireman, but I don't use that feature myself because I'm so well accustomed to manual firing. In any case, the Merchant Navy's ideal fire mass is 1,000 pounds for mainline running, but in the manual, you are advised to run at a lower fire mass if you're just pottering about on a heritage line where the speed limit is only a measly 25 miles per hour. As for the injectors, they have to be controlled manually all the time because they are not covered by the auto fireman. You have to press L and O for the right-hand steam and water injectors, or K and I for the left-hand injectors. I can never remember which injectors are more effective, and that goes for all the other PLD engines in my collection, such as the rebuilt LMS Patriot and Great Western Railway Grange. I was curious to see how the unrebuilt Merchant Navy would perform on a difficult section of Western Lines of Scotland, going from Castle Douglas to Newton Stewart. For this run, I used 35011 General Steam Navigation in her original condition, with the number 21C11, and set her up to haul 8 Armstrong Powerhouse Mark I coaches. The challenge was to see if I could get all the way to Newton Stewart without stopping, and I went into this knowing that it would be difficult given how I struggle with the injectors. I decided not to thrash the engine this time, and instead made more of an effort to keep to the speed limits, except for when I went across the Loch Cairn Viaduct. As for how GSN performed on this run, she was up to line speed before too long after leaving Castle Douglas, and initially steamed well enough to the point where her safety valves were frequently blowing off. The Merchant Navy can be a decent hill climber provided that A. the rails are not slippery, and B. the fuel levels are maintained at the right levels. If anything, trying to balance regulator and reverser settings while maintaining the ideal fire mass and water level so as not to lose too much steam was the hardest part of the run, and I ended up losing a fair bit of speed on the climb from New Galloway to Loch Scarrow, but fortunately, I didn't end up stalling completely. I got GSN back up to around 25 miles per hour just before passing Bryan at Loch Scarrow, and decided to coast through the tiny station with the regulator shut. I knew that the steepest part of the line, that being the 1 in 60 climb from Bigwater of Fleet Viaduct to Gatehouse of Fleet Station, was still to come, so I tried to save as much steam as I could after leaving Loch Scarrow behind. I initially thought that the Merchant Navy had a second valve simulation, as you'll find on PLD's newer add-ons, but that appears to not be the case here. To add, when the brakes are released, it's a good idea to leave the small ejector open a little bit in order to keep the brakes off. 21C11 General Steam Navigation was doing around 56 miles per hour across the Bigwater of Fleet Viaduct, and was only down to 49 upon reaching the station at the top of the next hill. After that, I felt that I could finally relax as it was mostly downhill for the rest of the journey, apart from the 1 in 100 climb from Cree Viaduct, past a random siding that goes nowhere, and up the hill into Newton Stewart Station. I figured that it was worth taking the rebuilt Merchant Navy for a test run too, so I set up a run on the Dorset coast route with 35029 Ellerman lines. And for the sake of a fair test, she was hauling the same consist as what I had set up for general steam navigation. The second test was a run from Poole to Dorchester South, and apart from the slow run through Hamworthy Junction, I tried to thrash the locomotive as much as I could to see how fast she could go, and managed to get her up to 83 miles per hour. Through Wargret Junction, never mind the 40 limit. I noticed that the injectors seemed very slow to actually inject water, even when I was coasting with the regulator shut, and although it's realistic, the boiler water level fluctuating depending on the route gradient didn't make it any easier. All things considered, I am of the opinion that PLD's rendition of the Merchant Navy class still holds up well after 6 years. Or the better part of 6 years in the case of the unrebuilt variants. Much like the textures, the modelling is well done. Same as how I like my steak. However, and as mentioned earlier, there is still a little bit of room for improvement across both packs. Both the original and rebuilt versions of the Merchant Navy class are good and powerful, albeit somewhat hard to drive, but that doesn't take away the feeling of satisfaction when I manage to drive a Merchant Navy successfully. Your mileage may vary, but personally, I think the Merchant Navy packs are reasonably priced for what they are. If you think otherwise, but are still interested in picking up the bullieds for yourself, you could always look out for a sale. As for where I'd rate PLD's Merchant Navy packs, I think I'll settle for 7.67 out of 10.